What's up, it's Cinema Shogun here with some major updates coming out of Ukraine. It seems like over the past few days, Vladimir Putin has gotten a tad bit more vocal about this entire situation. And earlier this morning, he released a statement saying that all of these sanctions against Russia are the equivalent of a declaration of war against Russia. Now, what does he mean by that technically? Is he really taking it as a declaration of war against Russia? Does he plan on retaliating against these various countries that have put sanctions on Russia? I'm not sure. Maybe it's just tough talk. Who knows? But he also stated that if any country established a no-fly zone over Ukraine, that they would immediately be considered as participants in a military conflict, which was what I was trying to tell you all the other day, because a lot of people have been asking for NATO to establish this no-fly zone over Ukraine. If they were to do that, that would automatically, like within minutes, result in World War III. In minutes, it would turn into World War III. So he basically reiterated that fact just in case y'all forgot that, hey, you can't just do that, or I'm going to war with y'all as well. So I guess, maybe people needed to hear that, because I think some people have forgotten how serious the situation is and how delicate this situation is. You can't just go around imposing your will and doing whatever you want, because it has consequences. And right now, for the most part, at least in my opinion, I think the majority of these countries just try to stay out of the situation before it spills over into something bigger. But U.S. Secretary of State said that Ukraine can absolutely win against Russia. He added that the war has already not gone as Russian President Vladimir Putin might have planned. He says that if it's the intention of Moscow to try to somehow topple the government and install its own puppet regime, Ukrainians are going to reject that one way or the other. And in many ways, I think he's right. I don't think the Ukrainian people are going to just accept whatever regime would take the place of their current government and their current government officials. I don't think the Ukrainian people would just willingly accept that, but I'm not sure how combative they would be towards that as well if the fighting stopped. I think a lot of these people would just prefer for the fighting to stop, and they probably wouldn't really care who's running the country or not. I'm just saying, I know that's not the case with everyone, but some of the people probably feel that way. But also another U.S. official released a statement and is basically contradicting everything the Secretary of State said. He's claiming that the Russian army has been gentle with their invasion so far, but now they will complete all the tasks that they set out within the next 10 days. So he's saying that they're going to complete all of their military objectives within the next 10 days, and that so far they have been going gentle. And then he also claims that Zelenskyy is delusional and Zelenskyy is a puppet. He should have kept Ukraine neutral instead of trying to join NATO. He also claims that almost all of the information that we're getting from Ukraine is all propaganda. So I don't think this guy is wrong. I don't think this guy is wrong. From what he's saying here, mind you, these are his words, not mine. He's saying that Zelenskyy and the people of Ukraine are being used as a puppet to fight this war, which is basically kind of a point that I tried to make in a prior video, and that he feels bad for the people of Ukraine because they're basically being used as pawns. And he says that he's claiming that the Ukraine and Zelenskyy, they are being propped up to fight. He's claiming that NATO and these other countries are kind of like boosting them up to fight even more instead of trying to establish some form of peace talks or anything like that. He's saying that they're basically egging them on to keep going, to keep fighting, instead of coming to some sort of agreement. There has been negotiations going on between Ukraine and Russia since it started. I'm not sure of all of the details of those negotiations. I'm sure that Russia may want to claim maybe parts of Ukraine if Ukraine surrenders now, and then Ukraine will be split into two. I think that's a possibility. I think it's also a possibility that Vladimir Putin set out to take over all of Ukraine. And it definitely looks like it as of right now. But from what this guy is saying, he believes that Zelenskyy and the people of Ukraine are pawns, that they're being encouraged to fight this war, even though it seems like it's going to be windless, and that the next 10 days are going to be very brutal, and that a lot of these numbers coming out of Ukraine are just complete propaganda. So take with that what you will. I will say that I agree with parts of those statements for sure. Talking about Ukrainian propaganda, we do have a new list of Russian losses coming from the Defense Ministry of Ukraine, which claims that Russia has now lost more than 10,000 troops, 39 planes, 40 helicopters, 269 tanks, 105 artillery pieces, 945 armored personnel carriers, 50 MLRS, 2 boats, 409 cars, 60 fuel tanks, 3 UAV, and 18 anti-aircraft warfare vehicles. So those numbers are very high. I don't think that Russia has lost 10,000 troops. I don't necessarily believe that, but I definitely think that they lost way more than Russia is reporting. So like I told y'all before, when it comes to war, there's all this propaganda. There's going to be all these fake numbers flying around. And the best thing that you can do is try to look at the claims from Russia and then try to look at the claims from Ukraine and then settle somewhere in the middle with your estimates, because the truth often lies somewhere in the middle. That's a statement that I find true time and time again. But it has been reported that there has been 3 assassination attempts on President Zelenskyy just in the past week. How true that is, I'm not sure. If that is true, that's insane, and I'm wondering how they stopped them. I would like to know how they stopped these assassination attempts, if they actually did take place. But we're also seeing Russia. They're starting to ban all of their social media sites. So Twitter and Facebook, it's all been banned in Russia. And it wasn't Facebook and Russia that banned, or Facebook and Twitter that banned Russia. Russia decided to ban these social media platforms. Why, you ask? Probably for various reasons. For one, I know that Russian forces, when they use social media, and maybe they post videos and stuff on social media, those videos have been used by the US and Ukraine, various countries around the world, to gather intel on the placement of these Russian troops as they make their advancement into Ukraine. So a lot of the intel that these various countries have, they've been collecting from people's social media profiles. And the same could be said for Ukraine, because Ukraine and the people of Ukraine have been pumping out their fair share of stuff on social media as well. And I'm sure that has been detrimental to some of their defense, because you might not think of it as much, but you just record a quick video of you walking along the woods. Someone realizes, oh, this is where those woods are. Next thing you know, you got airstrikes on that area. So it could be extremely dangerous just to have people on social media. But also, I'm pretty sure that Russia is trying to quell the different talks around this war, because no one likes war. And there's massive protests happening all over Russia right now. So they're going to try to make all that die down. They don't want people to be on here, talking about stuff that's anti-Russia or anti-war right now in a time of war. So they've shut down their social media, something I strongly disagree with. You already know that. But everyone keeps asking me about this 70-kilometer long convoy that's on the way to Kiev. They, for the most part, for the past few days now, have been stalled. There hasn't been much progress. They're kind of just stuck along the way. And everyone's wondering, like, what the hell is going on here? What the hell are these people doing? How come they haven't been destroyed yet? I can confirm that there have been attacks on this convoy, but this convoy is so long that a little skirmish around one portion of the convoy doesn't even affect the rest of the convoy. Of course, some well-placed missiles would destroy this convoy and destroy its hopes of moving forward, but Ukraine doesn't have those capabilities. But what Ukraine has done, they've blown up a lot of key bridges. heading into Kiev. And that's why you see this convoy halted. They're going to have to establish some type of military bridge, makeshift bridge or something to get across, which they better build it really strong if they plan on getting a 70-kilometer long convoy across that damn bridge. So that's why you've seen so much stalling with that convoy that everyone seems to be so worried about. I think people just really like the word convoy nowadays. I've heard the word convoy so much within the past couple of months, but I reported to you all in a prior video that a lot of people have been signing up to join the Ukraine's military. There's people from around the world who are coming to fight against Russia, just random mercenaries. And now it is being reported that over 66,000 people have returned from abroad to Ukraine to help defend Ukraine from Russian forces. So the Ukrainian military has more than doubled in size since this invasion began, which is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But earlier in this video, I was talking to you all about how the Secretary of State says that Ukraine could still win the war. And then another U.S. official is basically saying that there's no hope for Ukraine and that Ukraine is just being used as pawns to fight a winless war. Well, it turns out that Ukraine's allies, including the U.S., at the moment, they are planning for how to help establish and support a government in exile, which could direct guerrilla operations against Russian occupiers. Let me state that again. Ukraine's allies, including the U.S., are planning for how to help establish and support a government in exile, which could direct guerrilla operations against Russian occupiers. This right here lets you know that the U.S. doesn't intend for Ukraine to win this war. They're already devising their plan for when Ukraine is taking over, how they could help support basically guerrilla operations against the new formed government of Ukraine once Russia establishes control. So they're already thinking ahead. They're already planning for Ukraine to lose. This plan wouldn't be hatched if they thought Ukraine was going to win the war. I mean, of course, maybe they would have backup plans, but this plan is being hatched if Ukraine gets defeated. And I don't know, y'all. It just looks like they're already getting ready for Ukraine to fall. And they're getting ready to establish, like they even just said what their plan was. They're getting ready to help and establish basically guerrilla operations and government officials who will be in exile. So if Zelenskyy and his people get thrown into exile and they have these pocket little militias of guerrillas who are fighting back against Russia, the U.S. and their allies are already planning on how they can help them and coming up with various strategies for them. So they're already planning for failure. And the U.S. State Department also warns Americans not to travel to Russia. I mean, that's common sense. That's common sense. If anyone thought that it would be a good idea right now to travel to Russia, then I'm sorry, you're just stupid and maybe you deserve whatever happens to you over there, because why in the hell, now of all times, would you go to Russia? Why? There is no good reason as to why anyone would be over there. Now, yesterday, I reported to you all that there were some ceasefire agreements where Russia and Ukraine came to an agreement that there would be certain corridors for passage, meaning they would set up little zones and areas where people could flee, where civilians could try to still escape Ukraine, and there would be no gunfights and no fire in these areas. Also, these areas would be used for medical aid and distribution of food and water. And it turns out that they're saying that Russia actually failed with those agreements because they actually started firing in this no-fire zone. I haven't seen videos of it yet, but that is what is being reported from Ukraine. It is also being reported that hundreds of German missiles given to Ukraine were stored in moldy boxes, and the missiles don't even work. So a lot of these countries that have been providing help to Ukraine, they've been sending their oldest stuff. Like, what? We got some old missiles in the back, in the shed in the back? All right, well, give them to Ukraine. They're going and digging up rusty pistols that their granddaddy buried in their backyard and sending it to Ukraine. So they're sending them a lot of old stuff that doesn't even work. That's what Ukraine is saying. But also, the Ukraine foreign minister says that if NATO does not establish a no-fly zone, it is because NATO is not strong enough. Wow. So in other words, Ukraine is now trying to use reverse psychology to drag the rest of the world into this war. What else you want me to call it? The foreign minister says that if NATO doesn't establish a no-fly zone, it's because NATO isn't strong enough. No, it's because NATO, or the various countries in NATO, don't want their civilians struck with a nuclear missile over something they have nothing to do with. They're trying to use reverse psychology to continue to drag us into this war. I don't see no other way to call it, honestly. What would you all say? What does that sound like to you? It sounds to me like he's definitely doing whatever he can to try to drag us into this situation. Like saying that NATO is weak. I mean, at the end of the day, you're asking NATO for help. So if anyone's weak, wouldn't you consider yourself weak for having to ask NATO for help? Why would you accuse NATO of being weak for not establishing a no-fly zone when your country couldn't defend its own skies? And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just saying in reality, when you step back and look at the situation, it's like, you don't really have no room to talk here, right, sir? But yeah, they continue to talk about this no-fly zone, NATO no-fly zone. Because they know damn good and well what that means. Putin, just in case people forgot, Putin went ahead and released a statement today reminding people, hey, if y'all establish a no-fly zone, y'all are part of the war now. So if y'all want to establish a no-fly zone, go take your happy ass over there and establish one yourself. I don't know what to tell you. Just go buy a freaking drone from Best Buy and go do what you can in Ukraine. Because I don't think that any country should establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine and put their people at risk. We already have a lot of senseless lives lost in Ukraine. If a no-fly zone gets established, those numbers of lives lost will increase dramatically. And that's the reality of life. But earlier, when the situation first started, I reported to you all that Chernobyl was taken over by Russian forces and that the staff of Chernobyl were taken hostage. Well, I have an update on that situation. Things have not gotten any better. They are still captives. They are still being forced to work at Chernobyl. They are being worked in shifts because when you work at Chernobyl, there's still a lot of high radiation. So you have to go in with like these radiation suits. You work very short shifts, and then you have to leave the area entirely. That's the protocol. You don't get off and hang around the water cooler with the fellers at Chernobyl. You get up and you get the hell out of there because you're not supposed to be in there for more than a few hours at a time. Well, these people who they've taken hostage, they're still working them in shifts. But to my knowledge, they haven't been allowed to leave the site since this invasion began. So they are being exposed to so much radiation right now, not to mention the Russian forces that are there. I mean, I know Chernobyl has turned into a destination where a lot of people like to go look at the abandoned buildings and stuff, but it's still extremely dangerous. There's still contamination in the soil and the dirt. And, one person walking around making a YouTube video of the abandoned buildings in Chernobyl, it's not a big deal. But when you have thousands of troops, hundreds of trucks, tanks, you name it, kicking up all the dirt and dust in that area, you're bringing up all these radiation particles into the air, and then it gets spread. It's just extremely dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, but hey, what can I say? This is the world that we're living in, folks. But I want to know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. If you would like to support the channel, I always have my Cash App down below, or you can become a channel member today. But as always, find some time out of your day to get all of this crazy stuff out of your mind and try to enjoy life for a moment.